Hello, and welcome to the June 2021 edition of What's Jessica Reading Now? I am Jessica, a library clerk here at the Maston Public Library and self-proclaimed young adult bibliophile. This month, I'm going to talk about some YA books that I have read and enjoyed, and I think you would enjoy as well. So this time, I don't have any fun books to hold up and show you because I apparently left my copies at home. So I'm going to share my screen and show you them in our catalog. So let me pull up this here, and there we go. So the first one I'm going to talk about today is a trilogy that I actually read a couple of years ago and had kind of forgotten about, but really enjoyed. So I was really glad to come across it again. So the trilogy is called I believe it's just called the Gemma Doyle trilogy after the main character. The author is Libba Bray, and the title of the first book is A Great and Terrible Beauty. The basic premise of the trilogy is that our protagonist, Gemma Doyle, is a 16-year-old girl in about 1895. Her parents have passed away, so there's a bit of a mystery surrounding her mother's death. Gemma has lived her entire life in India, and she's English, but she's lived her entire life in India. And after the death of her parents, she's sent back to England to attend an all-girls school, sort of like a boarding school. There, she becomes aware of having certain powers and being able to transition into basically another world. Like I hear they're calling it the ability to see into the spirit world. She also has 3 other friends that she makes along the way, and bringing those girls into this world as well. There's also a love interest, a young Indian man, or young Indian boy man, also around the same age as Gemma. But what I remember, when I read this, I couldn't put it down. I absolutely could not put it down. I was just absolutely drawn into this lush world that Libba Bray had created. It was great to have the juxtaposition of the real world versus this magical spirit world. Plus, at the time, now it's fairly common to have female protagonists with certain powers. At the time, it wasn't something I had come across very much. I read this, over 10 years ago. It was before I was, prefaced before children and after children. So this was before I had kids. So I read this about 12 years ago. But Libba Bray is also still a current writer. Her latest series is the Diviner series, which I read the first one and it wasn't really for me. This one I read all 3 books. The first one is A Great and Terrible Beauty. The second one is Rebel Angels. And then the third is The Sweet Far Thing. So these ones, unfortunately, we don't carry at Macedon. But they are available through interlibrary loan. Also, the Diviners series that Libba Bray has, we do not have the first book, but we have the rest of them. So so we do carry some of her books. She is an author I would say is definitely worth picking up and reading. The Diviner series I liked. It had this great sort of 1920s setting, and it had these teenagers that were discovering that they had different powers. So similar, but I remember the premise was actually quite interesting. It was about a serial killer's ghost that got released, and was starting to sort of terrorize people again. And it sounds kind of hokey, but it was a lot of fun. But I remember that wasn't the main story. That was only the first book story, and by the end of the first book, I just was kind of I wasn't that intrigued by the characters, unfortunately. So that one, I'm not saying it isn't worth picking up and trying. I just kind of fizzled out for me. Whereas the Gemma Doyle trilogy, I definitely was going from book to book and just tearing through them. You can also see we also have them available in ebooks and audiobooks, excuse me, through Owl to Go, our digital library. So we have several ways that you can pick these up and give them a try. The next series I wanted to talk about, because apparently I'm doing series today, the Live a Bray books that I talked about, obviously, is a trilogy. The other two series that I'm going to talk about are duologies, so there's just two of them. Excuse me. I believe I've talked about this one before. This is actually book 2, Namesake by Adrienne Young. The first book is Fable, obviously by Adrienne Young, and there it is. Pull this one up. So I talked about Fable once before, that it was a fun fantasy novel set in a sort of maritime world. So it's got themes that are quite sort of pirate themed, and it's just a lot of fun. It's not a very complicated story, whether between the first book or the second book. I'm about halfway through the second book right now. So it's not a terribly complicated, complex story, or terribly complicated, but it is a lot of fun. It's a quick read. So it's something if you just want to kind of go into a complete fantasy world and you're not really looking for those hard magic systems. It's sort of a soft magic system. The main character, Fable, is a 17-year-old girl who is, at the beginning of the story, living on an island where her father left her 4 years before, basically to survive on her own. So she has been dredging, which is, excuse me, diving down and finding gemstones on like the coral reefs. You also discover that she has a power, of course, don't they all, that she is a gem sage. So she can kind of hear the gems and they make different tones to her. And so she can know what's real, what's fake. She can find where the good gemstones are. And since this is a very cutthroat business, that could get her into trouble if people knew it. At the beginning of the book, she's been saving up to get off of this godforsaken island. She's been living a very survival sort of hand-to-mouth existence, just trying to keep herself safe, trying to keep herself alive. She also has a bit of a, she wants to find her father and basically show to him that she was capable of surviving, even though he left her. So the story is mostly about the crew of the ship that she joins, this ship called the Marigold. There is a love interest with the captain, who's also about her age. I mean, I say captain like he's older, but he's he's not very. The character West, she does find her father. There's, you know, complications there, and at the end they basically have to pull off like kind of a big, I wouldn't call it a heist, but you know, it's a sort of, that's the culmination of the stories. Can they make their fortune on their own, basically? I will say that the book for me ended kind of abruptly. Like, it didn't really feel like the end of a book. It felt kind of like the pause at like, it reminded me almost of when you used to get miniseries on TV, and like those miniseries segments on TV, and it wasn't a true end. It was kind of just a, you know, like hold your breath till the next episode, which felt a little odd in a book, but that was the only thing that was kind of jarring a little bit, that I got to the end and I was like, wait, that's the end of the first book. But so when you pick up the second book, Namesake, we are following Fable, without trying to give too much away. She's in a bit of a situation. She's not sure what's going on. And she starts to learn more about her past and her family and her mother, who was where she learned her gem sage skills from. Her mother, in the last book, before her father left her on this island, of course, her mother had died. It seems to be the what you have to have happen. But in this one, she's learning more about her family, her past, also her skills as a gem sage, and can she sort of work her way out of these schemes and these betrayals by these people more powerful and bigger and older than her. Can this young kind of plucky crew outsmart these people that have been doing this for decades, kind of thing. And like I said, I'm about halfway through, so I'm not sure of the conclusion yet, but so far I'm really enjoying it. Again, it doesn't feel like the stakes are terribly high. It's just fun. It's a fast read. I don't really feel like, it's a very intense, or it's a very complex storyline, but I am enjoying it. So if you want something that is got fun characters, got a fun premise, this sort of pirate theme, with a little bit of, cutthroat betrayal thrown in, a little bit of romance, a little bit of found family themes, where sometimes, you need to find your own family. You need to find those people that you connect with, because maybe your own family wasn't so great. Then I definitely recommend Fable and Namesake by Adrienne Young. And what's nice is it's a duology and it's now complete, and both books are available through the library system. Also, it is available in ebook and audiobook as well. I'm currently listening to the audiobook, so that's nice. The last series I'm going to talk about, this is again a duology. So it is 2 books. I might have talked about this one before. I can't really remember because I read it a couple months ago. It is called Bone Crier's Moon by Catherine Purdy. The reason I'm bringing it up now is because the second book, called The Bone Crier's Dawn, is now available. Pull it up here. But it is unfortunately not currently available in our library system. So the reason I bring it up is because I have requested it in our library system. So we should be getting it here at Macedon. That doesn't seem to want to. Okay, there we go. So I'm quite excited for the conclusion of this series. There it is, the book 2 of the Bone Graces series, book 2 of 2. So it's just a duology. There's only 2 books to the series. So what's nice is that we should be getting that book here at Macedon in our next shipment. I'll be very excited to read the conclusion of this series. But to get back to the book that is available in our system. So the first book, The Bone Crier's Moon, is set in a world in which there are these women that are called bone criers that have to ferry the dead across the bridge from the land of the living to the land of the dead. And if they don't do this, then the dead will overtake the world, basically. They won't mean to. It's not that the dead are particularly evil, or it's just kind of like they don't recognize. Some of them don't realize they're dead. Some of them wreak havoc without meaning to, things like that. So these women who live in a sort of group of their own, they also have to, when they come of age, they have to like hunt down and find these various animals in which they sort of sacrifice to take one of their bones, and then they get that animal's power, and they call them graces. Elise is the sort of fiery, outgoing heir to the queen of this group of women. So she is the one who's supposed to take over when her mother can no longer serve. And she is very bold and very daring. So she has gone out to get sort of the difficult animals to, whoop, my lights just went off. The most difficult animals to, I don't know what, okay, so we'll just leave it like this. The most difficult animals to hunt down and kill to get their powers. Meanwhile, her best friend Sabine is more timid. She doesn't like the idea of killing. She has one grace, which was one bone from a salamander that she accidentally crushed with a rock. So it's funny because I think you're supposed to kind of follow Elise and really be invested in her story. I mean, they give equal time to both girls, and that's why I'm excited for the second one, because it really does become about both of their stories. I found myself really, really interested in Sabine's story because she was timid and she didn't want these certain things. But when her best friend Elise is kidnapped, she has to sort of embrace her magic and embrace the culture of her people, basically, to get her friend back. The other part that I'm neglecting to talk about is kind of a big deal. So once these girls or young women get 3 graces, so they get these 3 bones and they have these 3 graces, and the powers that they receive from these graces are what helps them have the power to ferry the dead, because they do have to fight them sometimes, because, as I said, some people don't realize they're dead. Some people are bad people and they're not sure what's waiting for them in the afterlife, so they really don't want to go. So that's why they have to have these powers. Plus I think it's like the power of a bird. The sight of a bird helps you see the dead, otherwise they're unable to be seen by the naked eye, they're invisible. But once they get 3 graces, then they have to take this bone flute on a bridge, play a certain melody, and it will lure their true love to them, and they have to kill their true love to make the final, meaning the final act to become this farrier of the dead. The idea being that you will sacrifice everything, you will give up everything in your life to this cause because it's that important, it's that worthy. If they don't kill their true love, then basically they have a year. Some women do decide to stay with their love for a year. Some of them have children or become pregnant. But if they don't kill this person, then both of them will die when the year is up. So and what's interesting about this story is that Elise thinks she wants nothing to do with love or this young man. She's very much so like, this isn't going to be a problem. And the main male protagonist, Bastian, his father was killed by a farrier or a bone crier. They call themselves farriers. Other people call them bone criers. When he was a boy, so he wants revenge. And he is the one lured to this bridge by Elise. He's the one that kidnaps her with his friends because he wants to know how this works and where these women are located so that he can stop this from happening, because he doesn't understand that they have, while what they're doing seems terrible, there is a important component to why they're doing it. And so it's a seemingly impossible task. But now these two are locked in this sort of agreement that they didn't want to enter into, that they have a year, or both of them are going to die. And in the meantime, if one of them dies, then the other one dies. So that's why he goes there expecting to kill this bone crier, and he can't, or he will die. And she can kill him, but because that's how it works. And it's okay. So it's a little bit dramatic, but it was fun. It was another one where it wasn't much, I wouldn't say it was a very high stakes or very, complicated, but it was a fun read. And there is a big twist at the end that I did not see coming. So I definitely was like, how is this going to transition into the next book? So I'm very excited to read the second book. Currently, the first book is available through Interlibrary Loan. The second book we should have shortly here at the Maston Public Library. So I think I've gone on long enough, and those are my YA recommendations for the month of June 2021. I certainly recommend Libba Bray's Gemma Doyle trilogy. beginning with A Great and Terrible Beauty. Also, you might give her Diviner series a try as well. I also recommend the Fable duology by Adrienne Young. The first book is Fable, the second book is Namesake, or the Bone Graces duology by Catherine Purdy. First book is Bone Crier's Moon, the second book is The Bone Crier's Dawn. So those are my recommendations for this month. I will be taking a few months off during our summer reading program, so you won't see me possibly until the fall, but I hope you've enjoyed these videos. I hope that they've given you some recommendations of some new books for you to try, and I hope everyone is having a good, safe summer and getting out and enjoying the sunshine, and I will see you next time. Bye.